2024. 1, 2, check. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, check. So some microphones are working better than others. Check.
Hola, hola.
Yeah.
Okay, now it's working. I mean, I have to start in Spanish, that's why. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming to this special event. Sorry for the delay. As you saw, it was meeting that's happening here. And of course, like our time to set up the interpretations, it's just to consume a little bit now. So we will have in Spanish speakers and also a Portuguese speakers. So as this room do not have interpretation equipment, so then the interpreters will just jump in the mic and translate the summary of each speakers from the Portuguese and also from the Spanish. But before we start anything, as we are in an indigenous way of doing the meeting, I would like to request my sister Sarah from Panama here to do us a very short blessing before we start the meeting. Sarah, thank you for accepting to do the blessing, and now over to you.
Evariquevara, Humara Itea. Buenas tardes, hermanos y hermanas. Más que una invocación, es poder transmitir el legado espiritual y pedir permiso a nuestros sabios y sabias que hoy nos permiten poder estar aquí presente. Desde la visión nuestra como pueblos indígenas, invitar en esta sesión de trabajo, poder seguir reflexionando y poder tomar toda nuestra cosmovisión, nuestra espiritualidad, para poder desarrollar esta gran sala en sabiduría, en pensamiento y sobre todo en búsqueda de ese reconocimiento que necesitan los pueblos indígenas para tener una participación plena y efectiva. Muchas gracias por el espacio y por permitirnos de que la sabiduría y el conocimiento de nuestra espiritualidad esté presente para poder tomar acciones positivas en este trabajo que hoy nos encontramos los pueblos indígenas.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Sarah Omi, and I would like to say hello first in my language, that is the Embera language, to everyone. And more than carrying on a blessing today, what I think we should do is to transmit the legacy of our elders and our ancestors. So I want to ask permission to our wise people, our elders, and everyone that is here present today to transmit the legacy of our spirituality. This is something related to the vision of us Indigenous peoples. We want to transmit today the vision of Indigenous peoples to reflect around our cosmovision and our spirituality, to transmit our wisdom and to acknowledge the right to full and effective participation to Indigenous peoples. And this way, our actions will have a positive outcome today. Thank you very much.
Okay, let's go old-fashioned. That's why as indigenous, we always trust our traditional knowledge that never fail us. Technology have always a challenge. So I would like to remind you where we come from for this event. So as you all remember, Indigenous peoples was asking for too long to have direct access finance. And that's have been one of our fight as we are protecting the nature. And we also wanted to have the way that we better protect it. And then we come ourselves, the 7 sociocultural region, discuss it, and then come up with document that the principles and guidelines we develop for direct access finance based on different ecosystems. And then we come having some meetings with COP presidency that trust us. And then at the COP 28 with the COP president that we sit together and then we define the way of how we can have the second pledge on Indigenous peoples. As we had at the COP26, the development of 1.7 billion for Indigenous peoples, and that was for forests. And we said how we can have a more participatory and more ecosystem to be included on that. And in that way, we organized several high-level meetings and also consultations with Indigenous peoples from the 7 sociocultural regions. So it started by a high-level meeting during COP28 that we had most of the partners who are joining us today also from multilateral organizations and from private sectors, from public sector, and also from philanthropic, that we discussed together and set up a way of how we can take our commitments through all those COP to end it up in the COP 30. The last one we had in Unga, one of a big meeting included our sister Minister Sonia and then Razan, Minister Susanna Mohammed, and we discussed it about another next step that we carry out in Cali. So all those way it set up the objective of today's meeting. So today is another step forward that we want to take our discussion to move. So the objective is having some keynote discussions and then some panel that we can hear, but to divide us in 3 working group. And then from the 3 working group, every group can come up with how we can move together in a concrete way to have the second pledge for Indigenous peoples that can be learned at the COP 30. In parallel, we are gathering informations, and then COP28 is funding a study of all Indigenous peoples, what they want and where we wanted to go. So then this study is going in parallel to reach us with a data. And at the same time, many organizations of Indigenous peoples or support of Indigenous peoples having several meetings that can help us to fit really in what the meaning and how we can get the direct access finance for Indigenous peoples. So this is my introduction for today. And I would like to thank my sister Razan, who left, unfortunately, for an emergency home. Otherwise, she will be in person with us here. And then her team who kindly been with us and then helping, supporting during all these years. Really thank you for all what you are doing. So I would like to ask the technicians to put us a short video of Razan. Even she's not here, she sent us a video that can help us set a little bit the scenes of what the co-presidency as champion accompanying us in this meeting. So please, if you can play the video.
Dear friends, dear colleagues, dear brothers and sisters, it is my honor to speak to you about the issue of direct access to finance for Indigenous peoples. As the UN High-Level Champion for COP28, I am deeply committed to continue to advance these important conversations, and hopefully beyond my tenure. So where are we when it comes to direct access to finance for Indigenous peoples? Many of you were at the CBD COP, where this issue was at the center of discussions, and where parties agreed, amongst other things, to establish the Cali Fund. This outcome, in addition to the adoption of Article 8J and the decision to establish a subsidiary body co-chaired by Indigenous peoples, are a result of the leadership of Indigenous peoples. Thank you and congratulations. But I hope that we can build on these successes from Cali within the context of the UNFCCC. At COP28, and this year, as you all know, at the Climate Week in New York, we explored ways to advance this. Given that climate finance reaching the ground remains, again, as you know, both insignificant and insufficient. I'm pleased to share that we have made some progress that will hopefully result in tangible outcomes at COP30. Most significantly, we heard from the Forest Climate Leaders Partnership and the Forest Tenure Funder Group about their ambition to renew the IPLC pledge, which offers direct access to finance at its core. It is essential that we continue this work on the road to COP30 and beyond. A new pledge will be needed. A new pledge that will reaffirm Indigenous peoples' role in contributing to climate mitigation, adaptation, biodiversity restoration, and combating desertification. I also look forward to learning how we can all help secure this ambitious, this fair, and far-reaching pledge. And I would like to invite new donors to lend support to this crucial issue. On multilateral funds, we also heard from the Green Climate Fund's leadership that momentum is building to ensure money reaches the most impacted by climate change, including Indigenous peoples. We look forward to the leadership of the Green Climate Fund to further this goal. I'm also looking forward to upcoming opportunities and discussing with the members of the GCF's Indigenous Peoples Advisory Group what is really needed to see progress by COP30. With respect to the private sector, we also heard some encouraging stories from business representatives who are responding to the call from Indigenous peoples for direct access to finance to ensure IPO's self-determination. However, we're still far from where we need to be to secure support at scale. And I'm pleased to hear from experts today about their ideas on how we can make progress on this topic in the run-up to COP30. I wish you fruitful discussions today, and I look forward to hearing from my team about the outcomes of your interventions and pledge my full support to all of you in securing an ambitious outcome at COP30.
Thank you for that. As Hannah is here in person, even Razan is not there, I would like to give her 1 minute to really talk as in person, not in video.
Thank you, Hindu. And I know I'm no substitute for Razan, but just to say she really wanted to be with you all here today and just extends her warmest welcome to everyone and her deepest gratitude for inviting her and our team into this conversation over the past 2 years. So to keep to Madam Chair's 1 minute, something that I wanted to share with you all is something that we've been discussing here with our key partners that COP28 and Razan herself has committed to as a key outcome of COP28. We have inaugurated a global data study on Indigenous peoples' climate contributions this past summer. And this is something that we are looking for all of your contributions on to make sure this can be a success. The goal of this study is to understand these contributions in more granular detail, to create a compendium of these cases, and to make sure that we can make the business case to donors about why they should be providing more direct access to finance to Indigenous peoples. And we also hope that this compendium, can serve as a useful tool for Indigenous peoples in their grants and in their requests for direct access. To share a small bit about what we've done so far, we have a lead consultant who is in the room right now. We have Sam. We have our partners in the world who are working with us on this across 6 regions. Hopefully, we'll get all the way to 7. We have Lena and Lydia. We have, I believe, Grace in the room and some other colleagues from Alatia, which is the global consortium who we're working through, which covers 19 organizations in 13 countries around the world. So we're really trying to be as inclusive as possible as we collect these case studies over, I would say, the next 3-4 months. Later in the session, we'll be putting up an email address where we're going to be asking colleagues in the room to amplify this information to, so that everyone can be submitting their contributions to the study. And something that I want to make clear about this is that we're working on really critically in partnership with Indigenous peoples is on the methodology. It has been designed in partnership with Indigenous peoples. It will be qualitative in nature. And we're really looking at this through a lens of decolonization by collecting these stories and case studies from all sociocultural regions. And finally, just to say, I see my colleague and my sister Joan in the room. I was really listening to you intently at the official opening of the action agenda just a few days ago. And something you said really stuck with me. Providing direct finance, it's not about charity, it's about justice. And so something that Razan would really like to leave you all with is that it is her and our entire team's intention through this small contribution to be part of this shared journey for justice in this critical body of work. So thank you for your kind attention, and we really look forward to working with you over the next year.
Thank you very much, Hannah, for that. And as we hear from Razan and Hannah, so we want to have the funding, but we are a little bit far behind what we wanted to have in the tables. And that's also why we are having this discussion here. And then, of course, it is not a charity. It is an obligation of reparation for Indigenous peoples, as Joanne said, and all Indigenous peoples are saying that it's not a charity that we are asking. So from that, let me continue with the opening remark. It's now on my great honor to also give the floor to my sister here, Anna Pate, who is the chief of the Special Advisor Office for the Parliamentarian and Federal Affair. Our sister Sonia will love to be with us also, but she left yesterday for G20. And then our sister Anna kindly that accepted to come and give us the opening remark from the COP30 presidency. So the interpreters will summarize what she's saying in English. After that, she speaks.
Obrigada. Boa tarde a todos. Eu sou Ana Paté, indígena do povo Xoclen, chefe da assessoria parlamentar no Ministério dos Povos Indígenas do Brasil. É uma honra poder falar em nome da ministra Sônia Guajajara. Ela precisou, como bem disse a nossa parceira, voltar para o Brasil por conta do encontro do G20, mas me pediu para dar especial atenção a esse encontro. Desde nosso último encontro, durante a Assembleia Geral das Nações Unidas, em setembro, muita coisa ocorreu, mostrando que precisamos avançar na ambição de um pledge para o financiamento das políticas indígenas de proteção territorial e para o acesso ao direito dos povos indígenas aos recursos internacionais ambientais. Mas, primeiro, a ministra Sônia pediu para contextualizar a urgência dessa pledge. Este é mais um ano onde os eventos extremos estão aumentando, onde a temperatura aponta para ultrapassar a meta de 1,5, e, mesmo assim, os países centrais não se comprometem a aumentar os recursos para o financiamento ambiental. Ao longo dos últimos anos, de tudo que foi prometido, cerca de 1% de fato aportado. E deste 1% aportado, cerca de 1% é o que chega na ponta para os povos indígenas. Então, nós que protegemos a maior parte da biodiversidade do planeta, estamos fazendo isso com 1% do 1%, uma conta que não fecha. Em Cali, por exemplo, comemoramos muito o fato de termos conseguido o órgão subsidiário 8J. Foi histórico e importante. Também conseguimos a menção de que 50% dos recursos do Fundo de Reparticipação de Benefícios sejam aplicados em políticas e projetos para os povos indígenas. E também avançamos na perspectiva de que esses projetos possam ser por meios de acesso direto. Porém, também em Cali, os países centrais anunciaram promessas ainda menores que em 2023 e estão lutando para que este fundo de reparticipação de benefícios seja de caráter voluntário. Ora, do que adianta colocar 50% de um fundo voluntário, onde sabemos que as empresas que violaram e roubaram nossos conhecimentos tradicionais vão seguir se dispondo a pagar essas violações? Este debate também está aqui em Baku. Precisamos demandar mais apoio dos países centrais e mais compromissos com o financiamento direto. Enquanto governo brasileiro, entendemos que as melhores soluções são multilaterais e vamos seguir defendendo isto. E enquanto governo e lideranças indígenas, também entendemos que não temos mais tempo a perder para a defesa dos territórios, para a conservação da biodiversidade e enfrentamento das mudanças climáticas. Por isto, vemos que a COP30 como decisiva para avançar na mais alta ambição para o apoio a essas políticas e os projetos para os povos indígenas. A ministra Sônia está determinada. Estamos certos de que nossas políticas estão adaptadas aos compromissos de adaptação e mitigação desta COP. E estão alinhadas com as metas da COP da biodiversidade. As políticas indigenistas no Brasil e no mundo são políticas internacionais e só serão efetivadas, de fato, se contarem com financiamento internacional. Por exemplo, nos últimos 10 dias no Brasil, avançamos na regularização histórica de territórios do povo Guarani Kaiowá, que há décadas sofrem com o avanço da fronteira agrícola e com ameaças e ataques dos piores setores do agronegócio brasileiro. Também iniciamos a retirada dos invasores do território Munduruku, um dos territórios indígenas que mais sofre com a mineração ilegal. São políticas concretas que enfrentam grupos que apostam na destruição da natureza e dos direitos indígenas, mas que não podem depender apenas dos esforços do Brasil. Precisamos que essas políticas continuem qualquer que seja o governo e, por isso, precisam de suporte internacional. Por isso, a ministra Sônia está realmente determinada. A conta não fecha, comece a fechar. E para isto, temos que seguir lutando a nível multilateral, mas temos que avançar para uma nova pledge, ainda maior e mais ampla, em favor dos direitos territoriais, dos direitos dos povos indígenas, dos direitos da natureza e em favor de todo o planeta. Sabemos que temos muito ainda a fazer, mas contem com o Brasil, com o Ministério dos Povos Indígenas para avançarmos o mais rápido possível nos próximos meses. E façamos juntas que a COP de Belém, de fato, seja uma COP histórica. Muito obrigada.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Anna Pate, an Indigenous member of the Xokleng People and Parliamentary Advisory to the Ministry of Indigenous People of Brazil. It's an honor to be able to speak on behalf of Sonia Guajajara. She had to return to Brazil because of the G20 meeting, but she asked me to pay special attention to this meeting. Since our last meeting during United Nations General Assembly in September, a lot has happened, showing that we need to move forward with the ambition of a pledge for the financing of Indigenous people, protection policies, and Indigenous people direct access to international environmental resources. But first, the Minister Sonia asked us to contextualize the urgency of the pledge. This is another year in which extreme events are on the rise, where the temperature is set to exceed the target 1.5, and yet the central countries do not commit to increasing resources for environmental financing. Over the last few years, of all that has been promised, around 1% has actually been contributed. And out of this 1% contributed, around 1% is what reaches Indigenous people at the end. So for those of us who protect most of the planet's biodiversity are doing with 1%. An account that doesn't add up. We need to change this. In Cali, for example, we celebrated the fact that we got the 8J subsidiaries body. It was historic and important. We also managed to get it mentioned that 50% of the resources from the Benefit Sharing Fund should be applied to policies and projects for Indigenous people. And we also made progress on the prospect that these projects could be through direct access. However, also in Cali, the center countries announced even smaller promises in 2023, and we are fighting for this Benefit Sharing Fund to be voluntary. Now, what's the point of putting 50% into a voluntary fund where we know that the companies that have violated and stolen our traditional knowledge will continue to refuse to pay for those violations? This debate is also here in Baku. We need to demand more support from the central countries and more commitment to direct funding. As the Brazilian government, we understand that the best solutions are multilateral, and we will continue to defend this. And as a government and indigenous leaders, we also understand that we have no more time to lose for defense of territories, the conservation of biodiversity, and tackling climate change. This is why we see COP30 as decisive in moving forward with the highest ambition to support these policies and projects for indigenous people. Minister Sonia is determined. We are certain that our policies are adapted for the adaptation and mitigation commitments of this COP, and we aligned with the goals of the Biodiversity COP. Indigenous policies in Brazil and around the world are international policies and will only be formed if they have international funding. For example, in the last 10 days in Brazil, we've made progress in the historic regularization of the territories of the Guarani Kaiowá people, who for decades have suffered from the advance of the agriculture frontier and threats and attacks from the worst sectors of Brazil agribusiness. We also began to remove invaders from the Munduruku territories, one of the indigenous territories that suffers the most from illegal mining. These are concrete policies that confront groups that are bent on destroying nature and indigenous rights, but they cannot depend solely on Brazil's efforts. We need these policies to continue under any government, and that's why they need international support. This is why Minister Soine is really determined. The bill that isn't closing is starting to close, and for this, we have to keep fighting, multilateral level, but we have to move on to a new pledge, even bigger and broader, in favor to territorial rights, the rights of indigenous people, the rights of nature, and in favor of the whole planet. We know we still have a lot to do, but count on Brazil and the Ministry of Indigenous People to move forward as quickly as possible in the coming months. And let's work together to make the COP in Belém a truly historic COP. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Anna. It's really lovely to have you here. And thank you also for representing our sister Sonia. We need both your voices there. So brothers and sisters and colleagues, friends, let's move to our second part. We know that we don't have a lot of time and we wanted to really dive deep in a great outcome to come out on that. So we have like 2 short sessions. I would like firstly to ask my brother Juan Carlos here, who is leading the Global Alliance of Territorial Communities. Then as we know that all the 3 basins are very important, but to give us a very short 3-minute opening remark to tell us really what you think about this pledge that we are talking about and what should be done. Juan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Hello, everyone, brothers and sisters, and all the authorities and delegates here. I'm going to try to be very briefly. Science, as indigenous people from the planet, and we are here following the COP, Finance COP 29. Since we have achieved political consensus on this issue, everyone expressed concern about increasing direct financing and our claims to be committed to it. However, what we see is a clear imbalance, many words by little concrete actions. Latest, the report indicates that FG, the Forest Funders Group, that 79% of the 1.7 billion committed has already been invested. While this reflects donors' efforts to advance the pledge, the situation regarding direct investments remains discouraging and all the resources invested since the start to the committed, only 6% has been allocated directly to all organizations and communities. It is true, has been progress between 2022 and 2023, with direct investments increasing from 2.1% to 10.6%. While we must acknowledge this improvement progress remains painfully slow and disconnected from the urgently in our territories. As direct financing growth at an annual rate of just 8%, we continue to face trades, land grabbing, mining, agribusiness, and endangering our lives and territories. Despite these challenges, we persist in protecting forests, which house 80% of biodiversity and are crucial of the carbon sequestration. For this reason, brothers and sisters, we must accelerate efforts to ensure resources reach those who truly preserve the forests. We need a more ambitious commitment aligned with the realities of our territories. The next pledge must include clear annual growth targets for direct investments, 15% annually for philanthropy, and 5% annually on multilaterals or bilateral funds. At this COP, the colonial dynamics of financial are more evident than ever. Global and all countries responsible for most historical greenhouse gas emissions have yet to fully assume their responsibilities. We must also highlight inequities with countries that resources still fail to adequate reach in our territories. It's essential that both global and North and South countries commit working more closely with all organizations and financial mechanisms. This requires easing bureaucracy, adopting a accountability process that respects our cultural diversity, and enabling our participation in decision-making spaces. The same applies to multilateral institutions, which are often harder to access than governments themselves. Even the philanthropy must intensify efforts toward direct financing. In September, during the Climate Week, we launched the platform of Shandia Forum to highlight concrete solutions emerging from territories, and they are really delivering results through a financial mechanism. The forum brought together hundreds of people over these days, fostering experience sharing on accountability, strengthening transparency and resources to users, and encouraging donor commitments to direct finances. Additionally, we introduced a new mechanism in the Congo Basin and Brazil. We are doing our part now. It's essential that donors listen to our practices and to learn from them, instead of trying to adapt us to other models. Committing to direct financing as means committee descolonizing financial structures. This is the Shandia call solidarity, transparency, monitoring for a genuine climate justice. Climate justice requires recognizing not only that indigenous people are the least responsible for the climate crisis and the most affected, but it's also that we must at the center of the climate debates, formally recognizing indigenous people, ancestral territories, knowledge, and the key measure to address the climate crisis. Therefore, climate funds must allocate a greater proportion directly to all organizations, all communities, all territories, supporting what we have done for centuries, carrying our common home, the planet. We must be on road towards the COP30. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Brother Juan. This is really very interesting. And then you hear right the numbers as I hear. 79% was not yet to the indigenous peoples, 60% only to the indigenous peoples from the previous plague. That's what we wanted to change. And that really led me to another discussions as we all talk about Cali, we talk about CBD, and we talk about how we celebrate it, but we need the funding there. So then I would like to ask my sister, Fanny Kuri, who is from Colombia, who can also tell us her perspective as she was also at the COP CBD in Cali. 3 minutes, Fanny. I will give you the mic here.
Bueno, muchísimas gracias. Muy buenas tardes para todos. Voy a ir directamente a esa lucha de los pueblos indígenas últimamente, digamos, la solicitud expresa del financiamiento directo de nuestros hermanos de todo el mundo. ¿Por qué? Porque los pueblos indígenas son, como dicen todos, los que han conservado históricamente los ecosistemas vitales para la regulación del clima. Y de ahí los invito a conocer el Fondo Indígena Amazonía para la Vida como el primer ejemplo real de sinergia entre una organización, una banca multilateral y la organización indígena más grande del mundo, COICA. El Banco Interamericano de Desarrollo y la COICA, sin lugar a dudas, ha llegado a un punto de acuerdo para trabajar con los pueblos indígenas de manera directa. Es un hito en la inversión climática y de la conservación a través del financiamiento a los emprendimientos económicos y a la conservación real en territorio. No es utopía porque hoy ya está llegando a los territorios estos recursos financieros para mejorar las condiciones de vida de los pueblos indígenas y el fortalecimiento de las organizaciones y sus sistemas administrativos y financieros, porque históricamente se ha dicho que los pueblos indígenas somos incapaces, que no tenemos la capacidad de manejar recursos financieros y por lo tanto la cooperación también tiene la responsabilidad cuando entrega los recursos de que se gestione y se ejecute bien, y eso consiste en el fortalecimiento de nuestras organizaciones. A la vez, el fortalecimiento y financiamiento directo es responsabilidad de la cooperación, es trazabilidad de los recursos y es transparencia también de la cooperación de lado y lado, tanto como para los pueblos indígenas como para la cooperación. Es justicia con los que realmente hace la conservación en territorio y porque toda la cooperación generalmente pasa por nuestros territorios, donde están los bosques, donde está la biodiversidad. Nuestros territorios indígenas son los que tienen esto. Siempre toda cooperación se enfoca en los territorios donde hay biodiversidad y bosques, de manera que son los territorios indígenas los llamados a ser beneficiados de esta cooperación, pero como decía mi hermana de Brasil, somos los menos beneficiados. Llega apenas el 1% de la cooperación, de manera que los invito a que se apoyen los mecanismos propios de financiamiento de los pueblos indígenas, como este Fondo Indígena Amazonía para la Vida, que es una realidad que va a trabajar entre el cooperante y los pueblos indígenas a través de un mecanismo, de un comité de gobernanza también para despolitizar esta cooperación, porque también la politización de la cooperación a veces no permite que se llegue a buen término. Y en la cooperación también se exige el respeto y el reconocimiento a los mínimos estándares de derechos indígenas que se reconoce en la Declaración de las Naciones Unidas y otros instrumentos que reconoce derechos humanos y derechos de los pueblos indígenas. Muchísimas gracias.
So good afternoon to you, my brothers and sisters, and I want to speak to you a little bit about the struggle of Indigenous peoples, as lately many of you have been talking about, and to talk about really the direct finance that is, brothers and sisters, that we need, this direct finance, direct access to this finance around the world. Well, why do I say that? Well, it's because as Indigenous peoples, we are the ones that are doing the conservation. We are the ones that are regulating the climate. And I can give you an example of how this is put into practice with a fund that's called the Amazon Indigenous Fund for Life. And this is a real example of real synergy between Indigenous peoples, non-governmental organizations, and a multilateral bank, and COICA, the largest Indigenous peoples organizations of the world. And with the American Development Bank, we were able to come to an agreement where we can have the direct access to these funds. This is a real hallmark in history. This is because we are the ones that are doing the conservation. We are the ones that are doing small businesses economically, and this is something that is a reality. This is not utopia. These are our resources in our territory, and these are the resources that we can use to improve the lives of Indigenous peoples. And many times historically, it has been said that as Indigenous peoples, we do not have the capacity to manage this kind of money, or this finance, direct finance. So therefore, if an organization wants to work with us, or an institution, this cooperation has to be done in a very responsible way, and it has to be done in a way to strengthen our organizations. And this direct access to finance has to be traced, it has to be transparent, and it has to be done so that as Indigenous peoples, we can have justice done for us, because we are the ones that are protecting the forest and the biodiversity. So with this cooperation from other institutions, we are the ones that will benefit from this. And as my sister from Brazil mentioned, it's only 1% of this finance that is reaching us. So therefore, we need the support for these mechanisms, such as the one that I mentioned, the Amazon Indigenous Fund for Life. This kind of mechanism is the one that will work to commit with a committee of governance that we already have in place. And this is something that will depoliticize the environment, because sometimes politics get in the way of good results. And another thing is we need to respect the rights of Indigenous peoples, as mentioned in the United Nations Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous Peoples and other instruments that protect the rights, that protect human rights. And with this, I say thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Sister Fanny, and thank you for mentioning the transparency and then the accessibility and the partnership that really we want. So we designed this event by giving the floor, giving the Indigenous peoples speak first, and then get the other funder group to respond to the Indigenous peoples. So then we know that we are talking for ourselves and about what we want, not listening first before to respond. So that leads me to this last part before we break out group to discuss about what you hear. So from Solange, who is from philanthropic, Right and Resource Initiative, and to Hans, who is from the Norway government. And I remember, Hans, the discussion that we had during the COP21 in Paris, where we really wanted to have direct access finance. And my sister Joanne and me stayed late until 1 discussing with you how your government can put the money in the table. And of course, the Green Climate Fund, and now you are changing all the policies to really give the direct access finance for Indigenous peoples. So to 3 of you, I really would like you to respond in these questions. How have these discussions on direct access finance you hear from my brother Juan and also my sister Fanny there, and from the introduction we give, and since the New York Climate Week in Cali, how do you think that we can reach what we are asking for? What is your perspective in this issue? So I really would like to hear, and I know it will be an exciting announcement today. So then that will be a great surprise I think we are going to have. Let me start by my sister Solange. Solange, merci beaucoup de nous rejoindre. Et si je peux vous demander aussi, if I can also ask you to just speak a little bit slowly to allow the interpreters to translate into Portuguese and Spanish, that will be lovely. Solange, your perspective, please.
Thank you very much, Hindu. Hindu started speaking in French because she's from Chad, I'm from Senegal. So it's a natural connection there. So good afternoon, everyone. As part of this conversation, I have 3 main questions. The first one is, what is our target? We have been talking about direct access to finance, but how much are we talking about? But also, how are we doing around reaching that target? Who do we need to add to reach that target? We already know who are the actors who are contributing, but who are we missing? So regarding the target, what I want to share is the target from the Path to Scale network, which is a network of more than 60+ institutions ranging from strategic allies, donors, and right holders. So what we are saying within the path to scale, and it has been established by RRI, and currently we are co-chairing with the Tenya facility here, present in this room. So our target is that we need at least 10 billion by 2030, at least 10 billion, in order to support the recognition of an additional of 400 million hectares of tropical forests. So this is the minimum required to contribute to the global climate and conservation goal by 2030. We have heard also from IIED that if we keep in mind all the enabling conditions, it might go up to 30 billion. So what do we know regarding how we're doing? What we know is that the current rate of disbursement, the way it's going, we will mobilize around half, meaning 5 billion of the 10 billion by 2030. Then you would agree with me that there is a work that we need to do. We need to accelerate, we need to get more funding in order to reach the minimum required, which is the 10 billion. And here the main question is, how can we mobilize additional public and private donors? And I would like to bring into this conversation an actor that we don't talk much about, which is the private sector. You would all agree with me that the private sector has responsibility and a role to play. We have learned from Cali in Colombia, COP16, that there is a fund established like from the pharmaceutical industry benefiting from genetics in tropical forest areas. And we have the agro industry, we have the forestry, mining sectors, and also all these companies have now forest positive policies, and they are seeking opportunities to really link to their footprint and to invest in securing right and keeping forest standing. And last, what are the groups that we're talking about from the private sector? I would like to raise quickly 4, and I will stop there. One is we have groups who need to seek a direct link to their supply chain footprint, and I mentioned the ag industry, forestry, and mining. Second, we have groups who are benefiting from the presence of the genetic diversity of world tropical forest, the pharmaceutical. 3, we have group investing in community-led enterprises like banks, investors, development finance institutions. And 4, we have group joining in on global ambitious pledges to mobilize capital to mitigate climate change. How do we interact with the private sector? I think that's the main question. And I will invite some of you to join me during the breakout to explore more what's the best way to engage with the private sector. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sister Solange. Thank you for the way forward that you already give through the 3 points that really what we want. Allow me now to move to Norway. So Hans, you are chairing the funder group of 1.7. So if you can give us your perspective about how we can reach the 2.0 pledge, that will be nice. Hans.
Thank you so much, Hindu, and good afternoon to all of you. I'm happy to be here. We do this afternoon, and I'll give a little update on progress report on direct access to finance from COP28 to COP and the road to COP30. As Hindu said, we're part of the Forest Tenure Funders Group, and the report for 2023 shows that we have already allocated more than $1.3 billion US dollars from the $1.7 billion pledge. In 2023 alone, we dispersed more than $520 million, and as we heard earlier, 10.6% of these funds were direct support, up from 2.9% in 2022. 100 indigenous and local communities organizations received direct support in 2023, compared to 39 in 2022. Globally, funding to support indigenous peoples and local communities forest tenure has increased by more than a third since 2020, compared to the previous 4-year period. This shows that we are making progress as a funder community. However, ODA, as important as it is as a source of funding for indigenous peoples and local communities in developing countries, it is not enough. We need more than ODA finance. We need new financial mechanisms and we need contributions from the private sector. Right now, we are in the process of identifying what funders can commit to for the next 5-year period. All of us need to work together on this. Indigenous organizations, countries, and other funders work together in designing a new pledge so that it can have the real impact we all desire. Tropical forest countries, including Peru, Colombia, and Brazil, came together in Cali with a call for action to step up the recognition of land tenure rights for indigenous and local communities. And these efforts need our support. Globally, millions of hectares of land are in the process of being formally recognized. So the opportunity is large, but it requires systemic changes to land and forest tenure laws, policies, and implementation capacity. We also need more funders, both public, private, and multilaterals, to join these efforts. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Hans, for this. And now, of course, are coming from government, so enhancing policies to give access to the direct funding at the national level is really very important for us. Let me go to my last, not the least speaker from the Green Climate Fund. So Charles is the Chief Strategic Officer that joining now Green Climate Fund to turn Green Climate Fund in a very simple and accessible for Indigenous peoples. If you can give us your perspective, please.
Thank you very much, Hindu. And on behalf of the Green Climate Fund, I would like to thank all of you for this opportunity to provide you with a brief update on what we've been doing since the last opportunity to speak with you in the New York Climate Week. As this is the first time that I've had an opportunity to speak with you, I would just like to take a moment to introduce myself. As Hindu had said, I am the Chief Strategy and Impact Officer at the Green Climate Fund. And our team on inclusion, social inclusion, reports into me as part of this integrated office. I spent 2 years in the Southern Andes, living in a Saraguru indigenous community, where they were kind enough to re-educate me in an indigenous worldview. I remain very appreciative of that. The Green Climate Fund recognizes that this issue of direct access is not a matter of charity. To the contrary, it is a matter of justice. It is a matter of rights. It is the right thing to do. It is also the smart thing to do, recognizing the value of indigenous knowledge and wisdom and all that this can contribute to our collective climate ambitions. The Green Climate Fund's commitment to improve access to adaptation finance for underserved communities, including indigenous peoples, is in two broad categories. One of those is broadly simplifying and accelerating access to climate finance for action. The second part is in 3 different initiatives. The first of those initiatives is developing a program on locally led adaptation. And the initial steps in this effort will be to develop guidelines for locally led adaptation, LLA, that will be presented to the next meeting of our board. And we look forward to engaging with the GCF Indigenous Peoples Advisory Group, IPAG, and other stakeholders as we develop this and over time, ultimately refine and improve it. The second of these initiatives is about completing a diagnostic on vulnerability, having a better understanding not only of differential vulnerability between countries, but also within countries and the vulnerability of different social groups. The third initiative is to continue supporting IPAG to implement their goal, which includes efforts to enhance Indigenous peoples' access to climate finance. Now, in this final regard, I'm pleased to share that Malaysia has offered to host a global meeting in 2025, and this will be funded and supported by the GCF, and we will bring together Indigenous peoples to discuss 2 main issues. First, how we, as the GCF, can learn from GCF experience with Indigenous peoples so far, and ensure that our projects and programs going forward have a greater positive impact on the ground. Second, we'll also be looking at how to enhance and simplify access for Indigenous peoples to funding for climate action. We hope that these efforts will meaningfully increase Indigenous peoples' access to climate finance. We also realize that this will not happen at the scale and speed we all want without meaningful collaboration and partnership with all of you. We therefore invite you and welcome interested groups to share their experiences with us, which I assure you will be used as a foundation for our plans moving forward. Thank you all very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you for highlighting that you have already IPAR and also the accessibility. That's the one you are going to work on it. And then hopefully that next year it will be really very exciting to gather all Indigenous peoples and to get the input there. So colleagues, as we hear that some country already willing to put money in the tables, Norway and other funder group, and also from philanthropy and from multilateral. So I think we need to work on that and see how much we wanted to put in the tables. And you said, Solange, not less than 10 billions that we need by 2030. So let's do an exercise. Allow me to ask my friend and sister, Lena, where are you? Lena, okay, to explain to us the exercise that we will do as a break session that everyone can contribute, and then we can capture all that. Lena?
Thank you very much. I think we were a little bit too ambitious in wanting to have breakouts now. So you all have 3 Post-its, and they match with 3 questions. So what we want you to do is take these Post-its and put your answers on each of the Post-its that you have. You can have more Post-its if you have more answers, but at least one. The first is, what major topics do you think still need to be discussed to advance the issue of direct access to finance for IPs ahead of COP30? Then on the second Post-it, you answer, what key moments do we have to make progress next year? And what plans from across different stakeholders to mobilize greater support on the issue? You heard that we have 3 major topics. It's not only the pledge, it's also multilateral finance, it's also private finance. So on the second and the third question, it would be great if you can actually indicate if the stakeholders are related to the funds discussion, to the pledge discussion, or to the private sector discussion. And then what we want you to do, it's not difficult, just put your Post-its on these sheets that you can see, and we will take 5 minutes for this exercise, or 2. And the quicker you are, the more time we still have for final interventions. So the time's up. Anybody has question on the exercise?
Thank you, Lena. Let's ask the 2 interpreters, because we have also other people who do not speak English, to just say the questions. So write your questions in French, English, Spanish, or Portuguese, because we are going to capture that. All the language are good. So if you can just repeat the questions, please. Let me ask Portuguese first.
Bem? Quais são os assuntos-chave que você acha que precisam ser dialogados, tendo em vista o avanço deste problema do financiamento direto para os povos indígenas e comunidades locais, tendo em vista a COP30? Primeira pergunta. Segunda pergunta. Que momentos-chave nós precisamos para progredir até o próximo ano? E o terceiro. Que planos em diferentes países as partes interessadas devem fazer para mobilizar maior apoio neste problema do acesso ao financiamento direto?
Las preguntas en español serían, ¿qué temas principales cree que quedan por debatir para avanzar de cara a la COP30 y qué momentos clave tenemos para avanzar? Y la tercera pregunta, ¿qué planes tiene para movilizar un mayor apoyo en este tema?
Thank you. So 5 minutes to 15, I think we stop. Thank you.
It would be great if everybody can stand up and put their own post-its. So it's a little bit, feel free to move, but don't move too far. One more minute. So "30 seconds. So whatever you have written now, bring it to the walls, and then we still have 6 minutes for interventions, to 2 to 3 interventions.
Please put what you write into the screen wall, and let's do this exercise. May I ask Colina and maybe Veronica, if you can help her to collect the stick, and then if the rest can sit down, maybe we can have 2-3 intervention to hear from what you write down. What you wrote? Okay, may we sit down, please? May we sit down, please? And we have two people who can still collect the sticker. May we sit down, please? Thank you. So I would like to know who around the table wanted to have 1 minute intervention to tell us loudly what we should do as next step. I saw my sister Joanne Carlin. So if you can pass her the mic, please. And speak slowly to allow the interpreters translate to the peoples there.
Yes, thank you, Hindu. I just want to mention one of the key recommendations that came out in the consultation in Cali, which is for us to have a workshop, a joint workshop between Indigenous peoples donors, both public and private, members, leaders of the Permanent Forum and other to work on what are the mechanisms, what are the barriers that we need to address in setting the new pledge and ensuring that funds really flows to Indigenous peoples in the context of the demand of Indigenous peoples to go beyond forest, that to include other ecosystems and include all regions. So that should be a key moment, and I hope we can all agree to push for that, because that is a critical step to move this forward and address the challenges that has always been mentioned in the way we access funds. So I just want to emphasize that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sister Joanne. Exactly, this proposition can be workable. And as you said, we said that when we were in New York, we wanted to have a joint workshop between all the different funders. Hans, you are in the room. I wanted to take the opportunity. So we wanted to have a country representative. We wanted to have multilateral financial institutions, private institutions, philanthropy, and Indigenous peoples from all the regions as experts to have this workshop to design the pledge together. And also that the pledge should include all the regions and all the ecosystems. So this is a concrete recommendation from now into the COP30. Allow me to give another one. Janine? Okay, then Janine, then I go to the champions. Give the mic to Janine, please.
You can use now the. Let's try. Oh.
Thank you, my sister Hindu. For the you that don't know me, I am Janine Yazi, from Director of Policy and Advocacy for Indian Collective, and have been working very hard alongside our brothers and sisters from the different regions to develop our positions on how to further advance direct access to Indigenous peoples. And we've done a lot of work. We have resources, we have statements, and we have documents that further lay out in detail how we want direct access for Indigenous peoples across developed and developing nations to work, and what it needs to look like and the safeguards it needs to uphold. But what we also have are existing models that show how we can do this. Indigenous designed and Indigenous led funding mechanisms. We know that it is hard to bring donors and funders to the table, to even bring state parties to the table. But if we can do this diligently and share what those models look like and the change that they are able to make, the transformative projects that become possible when we stay committed to resourcing Indigenous peoples' self-determination and climate change solutions, and the effect that that has on creating regenerative food systems, regenerative economic models, climate resilient economic models, and effective solutions that impact entire ecosystems. That's what's going to inspire people to understand that it's not just about the pledges, but there's a reason why we want want to make direct access work because it makes the solutions work and it helps us scale it out and increase our impact. And we're doing the work as Indigenous peoples to advance that forward in every space possible.
Thank you very much, Janine. How we can use all those resources and how we can make it accessible and work together in all this mandate and criteria. So point well taken. Let me give the last word to my brother John here, so then who can also give us his perspective.
Thank you very much, Hindu, and thank you for many friends and allies around the table. I'm James Lloyd from Nature for Climate Coalition. I'm the political director there. And I just wanted to make the case that Nature for Climate has always supported that 20% of nature-based solutions finance should go to Indigenous peoples. This is based upon the CBD 20% figure of the financing. If you take the WEF UNET numbers on the financing of nature needs to triple its financing by 2030, which would take you to about 542 billion. 20% of that, circa 100 billion of investment should be going to the Indigenous economy if you based a link on that. This is on top of the tenure and rights. I think that's absolutely the grounding. But I think we should also have conversations about the role and need to unlock private investment into the Indigenous economy. We will support you wholeheartedly on the tenure, but we'll also work with you on the Indigenous economy in a way that you feel fit and right for us to provide support. But if you're not limiting it to this public finance, you need to engage in the private sector. So I think it's important to have a discussion about how public finance can be used to de-risk investment in the Indigenous economy and enable those finance flows to happen in the same way we're having around nature-based solutions. I think Indigenous people, in many ways, what we're trying to do with nature-based solutions, we're trying to learn from your knowledge and your ability to manage your places as nature and people as one. And in many respects, we're asking for Indigenous people to help us make the rest of the world more indigenous with nature-based solutions, not as an alternative to your knowledge and your wisdom. It's just like trying to help us learn from that. So in return for that, we would also like to knowledge exchange more with Indigenous people about how we can make nature-based solutions more like the Indigenous ways of managing land that you've done for many, 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 many centuries. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Brother John. That's exactly what we know, what we need, and we know that we have your support from the nature action team, and then of course having economy, private sectors, we need them, and Indigenous economy, we need that. We hope that we can count on you when we are putting everything, write it down. So allow me to give very short to two people. Like I didn't give anyone to that side, and I really love justice, so I cannot just like not giving someone from that side. So if someone can speak that side, I know, sister, I can give you 30 seconds, but I wanted to ask Nadi. Nadi is also helping the champion with the UNCCD conventions, and that wanted to have Indigenous peoples, because we are talking about funding globally for climate, biodiversity, land, and for SDGs. So Nadi, if you can also tell us something quickly, what will be your help on that?
Thank you, Hindu. Actually, I didn't raise my hand, but thank you so much. Just like, let's say it very clear. I'm always saying same hectares for land, people, and nature. So we only speak about one planet. So actions has to be synchronized. We have to deliver across all conventions, especially when it comes to land for climate action. So I will stop here and I will make it very clear and direct message. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nadi. Land is really very important, and we have to talk about the 3 Rio conventions that can be implemented. So, sister, you have 10 seconds, and we wrap up.
Okay. Merci beaucoup, merci pour la parole. Je m'appelle Madame Chouchouna de la RDC. Je voulais un peu mettre l'accent sur... je remercie tout d'abord RRI et tous les intervenants concernant leur travail sur l'appui des communautés locales, les peuples autochtones et les femmes. Et ici, je voulais mettre l'accent sur la première question qui nous a été posée, parce que c'est une question qui nous dérange plus dans nos pays. Je vais de la RDC, Congo-Kinshasa. Et il y a un problème d'accès direct au fonds climat, finance climat. Les communautés locales et peuples autochtones n'ont pas l'accès direct. Pourquoi? Parce qu'il y a ce problème des agences accréditées. Et c'est le problème des agences accréditées qui causent plus de problèmes aux entités nationales d'accéder directement au fonds CAFI. Et ça bloque même les peuples autochtones et les communautés locales et les femmes d'accéder directement au fonds CAFI. Il y a aussi ces problèmes aussi de la maîtrise de la gestion financière des communautés au niveau de la base. S'il y a possibilité qu'on puisse renforcer, multiplier les problèmes des systèmes de renforcement des capacités de la gestion financière des communautés au niveau de la base pour une bonne gestion et traçabilité des fonds. Un peu en résumé ce que je voulais dire.
Thank you very much. So Sister There said it is important, but we need to change the criteria for accessing, because so when now you have to access the climate fund, you need to pass through your national focal point on GCF, and this is very complicated to access. So we talk about those criteria, and we really have to work on this fund for indigenous peoples that cannot have this difficulty to access. Thank you so much, all of you, for the contribution. Let me tell you, all the note that you put in the stickers, we will be having that. We will be writing that down with the presentation. So that will help us to come up with another next step that we can plan a timeline. So our next timeline that we wanted to have, so we will have the UN Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues, where we can come up and discuss again how we can implement, and hopefully that our recommendations since last year that can be taken by some of the funder partners to have the workshop between all of us to really design what we wanted to have. And then maybe by June, when we go to the SABSTA and SBI, so then at least we can have a plan to really announce something for indigenous peoples. And we don't want to have a commitment. We wanted to have a real money that can be announced there, and we have to work all together. So we need you, not just to say we walk out from this room, then it's done. So if you have any information or any need you wanted to share, if please the technician, you can put the email up. So we have an email. So send us any proposition as the one my sister here said from DRC. And if any other person have a good idea to put it, please send it to this email and we can capture it. And we can also share any information with you in order to make this direct access finance and the pledge to become a real money for all of us. So feel free also to really reach out to us here. In case that you wanted to give us an information written, we will be very happy to get all those information. Thank you so much for all the work from the champion team. Thank you so much from the technician, the interpreters that really had hard time to translate all our fast speaking. Thank you so much for that. And thank you, my sister that is with us from the COP Terry. And we count on you to really make all our dream to become reality in the COP Terry. We will do that together. We are with you. Have a very lovely afternoon.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have directly another session after this. So I kindly ask you to directly go out and continue your conversation outside. Thank you so much. Can I ask you to kindly go out now because we have another session going on right now? Thank you. Can I kindly ask you to go out because we have another session going on right now? Can you continue your conversation outside? Thank you. Thank you. Muchas gracias. Can we kindly ask you to go out because there is another session going on right now? Thank you. Can you take the photo outside? Thank you. Thank you. Muchas gracias. Can you take the photo outside or continue the conversation? Can you continue the conversation outside? I thank you. Thank you. Have a